In 1800, about a third of Buenos Aires was black. And by 1875, the Argentine government had stopped counting black citizens in the census because there supposedly weren't enough left. Now, maybe it's just me, but when I hear something like that, I have questions because people don't just disappear. So, of course, I started digging. What I found was one of the wildest stories I've come across in a long time. See, a lot of people today genuinely believe that Argentina didn't have a significant black population, ever. If you ask some Argentines about black Argentinians, they'll probably tell you that black people just came there recently, that they're immigrants, that they've always been a tiny minority. But that's not what the history says. Black people helped build Buenos Aires. Black people fought in Argentina's wars for independence. Black people helped shape Argentine culture. Even parts of the tango trace back to Afro-Argentine traditions. So how do you go from a city where black people made up roughly a third of the population to a country where people grow up believing that black Argentinians barely exist? That's where the story gets ugly. Part of it was war. Black men were disproportionately pushed into military service and sent to fight in conflicts with devastating casualty rates. Part of it was disease. Yellow fever tore through Buenos Aires in 1871. And it hit black communities especially hard. But the more I read, the more I realize this wasn't just a story about tragedy. It was also a story about intention. Because there were powerful people in Argentina who openly believed that the country's future should be white. Not diverse, not multicultural, white. And unlike people today who hide behind coded language, these men wrote it down. One of the most famous was Domingo Faustino Sarmiento. He's celebrated in Argentina today. Schools named after him, streets named after him. A former president, a founding figure. And he argued openly that Argentina should be remade through European immigration. Then came something called the Blanqueamiento. Millions of European immigrants were encouraged to come to Argentina. The country changed rapidly. And while all that was happening, something else was happening too. The remaining Afro-Argentine population was slowly being erased. Not just from neighborhoods, from records, from census categories, from public memory. That's the part that got me. Because when most people hear the word erasure, they picture like burning books or something. But sometimes erasure looks a lot quieter than that. Sometimes it's changing categories. Sometimes it's deciding who gets counted, whose story gets told. And then a few generations pass. Right. And eventually people start saying there were never any black people here. What are you talking about? And what keeps sticking with me is that Afro-Argentines never fully disappeared. Their descendants are still there. Their history is still there. Their contributions are still there. The thing that disappeared was the acknowledgement. Right. And honestly, I think that's one of the scariest forms of erasure. Because once a country forgets who helped build it, it becomes a whole lot easier to pretend that those people never mattered in the first place. A third of Buenos Aires was black. And that should be common knowledge. The fact that it isn't is part of the story.